we'll get a survey that comes up, and that really helps us out. It also helps us out in the future when we do future webinars, so that we know exactly, or not exactly, but we have a good idea of what our customers or what our people want to listen to when we prepare for the next webinars. So that's why we put these polls up. Plus, it kind of gives you something to do while we were still waiting for a few other people to join into the program. So fill them out and just hit finish survey and let us know how they set up.
Yeah, we're just about to close the in the voting, and then you'll be able to see the results. So just another few seconds here. All right, share the results.
Looks like we've got a pretty good across the board. We've got schools and government and small business, industrial, retail, a little bit of construction, medical, transportation. That's a good cross section. Fantastic cross section.
Sure is.
That's really going to help us out.
Okay, well, we'll go ahead and end that survey and begin the presentation.
All right. Well, folks, I'm going to bring up the screen of what we're doing here as far as what my presentation is going to be. And we are working on that. Do you all see? I see what I need to do. I need to do that. And we will draw my corners down here like this, and lo and behold, you all have up on your screen coming up very shortly here, should have something that says sales success in the vending industry at the top with an overview of the sales processes. Are we seeing that?
Yes.
Okay. So we're seeing that. How about, I want to send out a quick chat. I just want to say hello to everyone and make sure that I want to see if I can actually see any chat. So if you all would post up just something up on there so we can see if your chat's working properly, that would be fantastic. And then we'll get started very shortly. How's everybody doing tonight? Dan, how are you doing?
I'm just living the dream.
Living the dream.
This is a perfect day. Actually, this was a great day. I was thinking this morning, because it was raining here where I am. I'm here in Atlanta. I don't know where everybody is. But as it was raining, I realized people are driving slower. And I love it. I told you this before, Larry. People don't work on Mondays and Fridays and when it rains. So I make sure to work hardest on Mondays and Fridays and when it rains because I got no competition.
That's a great statement. Joe, how are you doing this evening?
I'm doing fine. Dan is one of those looks at the glass and it's half full instead of half empty. I like that.
Well, isn't that the way it's supposed to be?
That's the way it's supposed to be. There's always opportunities. You just have to look for them.
Right, exactly. All right, well, let's get started here. We've got some pretty exciting stuff going on. We are going to teach you some basics in sales and the success in the vending industry. To do that, we usually start off, and my illustrious colleagues will agree with me that we generally want to start off with an overview of the sales process because, after all, you're going to need to know a little bit about what selling is actually all about. And so we've got up on the screen a picture of of what is the overview of the sales process. We've talked in a previous webinar about having a good marketing plan. Whoops, that's a little interesting, isn't it? About having a good marketing plan up here. So that's something that's covered in a different program. Marketing plan is basically what your ideas are, your strategic ideas are as to how you're going to sell and to whom you're going to sell to. So that comes out initially. We're going to pretty much cover this process right here, which is the actual sales process. And selling, and all selling starts with step one, which is prospecting. It's identifying leads and setting up meetings. It's an initial meeting. It's establishing rapport, gaining trust, and moving to the next step. It's getting data gathering, which essentially is asking great questions to find out what they're looking for and what they need. Gathering facts, agreeing on needs, coming up with solutions, proposals, what they're doing now, asking for the business, which is closing, delivering solutions, monitoring progress, which is what you do after you've installed your equipment and all that kind of thing, going for referrals, and then ongoing service follow-up. These are all issues that are the basics of sales, the sales process. Dan, do you have anything to add to that?
My ear hit something, and I hung up on you for a second. Didn't quite hear what you said.
Oh, well, I just went over this overview of the sales process. I was asking if there was anything that you had to add to that.
Actually, we'll go on with, but no, this is exactly the process that goes. It's just the challenge is this: it happens. Many of the things happen at the same time, and the way to make this process work is mainly to do it, and then you'll figure out what the area is.
One of the big things I'm circling right here, right now, is focusing on the customer. We all know that we want to try and make the sale, but if we don't fulfill the customer's needs and expectations, we're going to get no place. So I do like the fact that they have focus on the customer right in the center. So what we're going to do is now, I always like to start off, because we start off with prospecting, we're going to start off our process with prospecting, which starts right here. And that's always the place to start. I find that most vendors have the most difficulty in working prospecting. It's just kind of one of those things that can be kind of difficult for you if you're not used to doing it all the time. Prospecting can be a daunting prospect. In fact, what we have up here is prospecting is identifying leads and setting up meetings. Now, vending can be pretty simple as far as setting up meetings, because lots of times we'll just do walk-ins or cold calls, but prospecting boils down to about three areas. Two areas actually. There's cold calling, and there's identifying what we would call warm leads. Dan, do you do anything else besides that?
Besides calling?
Well, cold calling or warm leads?
Yeah, I mean, one of my best sources for leads is contacting people on a regular basis. And I do this, Larry, you get this, and some other people might too. I do a tip of the week. I don't know if this would be considered warm or cold, but it's basically just maintaining relationships with everybody that I've ever known. Not necessarily selling anything at that point. I do a tip of the week. It never does anything about selling. But what it does is puts me in their email to 5,000 people every week. And what I found is that every week I'll speak with someone that I haven't spoken with in 2 years that thinks I'm their best friend because they hear me talking. And when they have a need, I've already built up that relationship, so they kind of like me. They trust me. They know I'm going to do what I'm going to say what I'm going to do. And so when they have a need, it would be a risk for them to go with anyone else. And so
right. That's a function of marketing, and that we'll get into that more in a little bit here. So we'll go into some of that in the future. Let's go over cold calling, because that's the one that everybody hates to do, and so I figure we'll go over it first because we'll get it out of the way. Cold calling boils down to, you can do it a couple of ways. One is, my favorite was always just to knock on doors, and then you can do it via telemarketing or calling people on the phone. I'm going to talk about telemarketing first because that's the one I use the least. I always talk about techniques. There's a bunch of different techniques that you can do. You can do a customer survey technique. You can just say, hey, I'm just calling to see if we want your vending, things like that. But there's a bunch of different techniques. Dan or Joe, what do you use when you do cold calling via the phone? You spend a lot of time on the phone today.
As far as cold calling, it's not as easy as it used to be, because a lot of these businesses now have answering machines, and then you have to punch, who you want and all that kind of stuff. And a lot of times you can't really find out who the contact is that you need to talk to. So we do a lot of emails. We did do the newsletter and tip of the week, like you were talking about. Do a lot of knocking on doors and talking to different people and leads and different things like that. So you're right on the money on what we do.
Right. Dan, what do you do? You do a lot of phone work as well. What do? You really cold call anymore, or do you do all warm stuff?
Oh yeah, no, I'm a big fan of cold calling. I actually do it every day. I did it today, and I found that because of all the reasons that we all say, fewer and fewer people are doing it. And again, I'm all about reducing my competition. My main, the one piece of advice I can give with cold calling is I give my pitch to whoever answers the phone. I don't care if it's a babysitter. I don't care if it's someone just who walked in there. Because my plan is I'm going to ask them a question that they have no possible way that they can answer. And what they'll do is they'll say, you need to speak to Joe. And they'll give the phone to Joe, and then I can give my same pitch there. So if I can offer one form of advice, if you're going to do that. So I'm calling to see if you might be interested in having the best world-class vending service you guys today.
And there's a fantastic technique for those people that are out there listening. I always scripted my cold calls. Whenever I did it, I had an idea of what I was doing beforehand. I always wrote out a script. I followed it loosely, but I had at least the bullet points of what I was talking about. Do you do that, Dan?
Absolutely, and I change it all the time, though. But yes, I'm always reading a script.
Yeah, my big thing when I cold called was I like to knock doors. I would basically do what I called walking and talking, and I still do it even today. And because in my vending business, I was very geographically centered, so I wanted to make sure when I was out selling that I wasn't traveling all over town. This was a function of marketing. But I had a specific plan that I would go into an industrial park, and I wanted to limit my windshield time. And for all the vendors out there, they'll understand what limiting windshield time is. I wanted to be able to go from door to door to door to door, providing vending services. And so I did a lot of cold calling by walking into places. My favorite thing, like you, Dan, I would walk into, Dan, I have to ask Dan this. Dan, which door do you go in when you go to make a cold call and you're doing a walk-up? Or a walk-in. Which door do you?
The rule of thumb is you go in the door that's open.
You go.
I don't care if it's the front, back, the warehouse, whatever.
You've talked to me about this before. Which door do I always go in?
Oh, you go in the back door. You follow. Back? Yeah.
I always had the best luck going in through a dock, through a loading dock, because half the time, at least in the summer in Atlanta, the loading dock doors are always open, and if you go through the loading dock, at the back door, the man door as they call it, in the back is always open too. And when I would go through a door, who did I talk to? Just like Dan, I'd talk to the first person that made eye contact with me. That's who I always talk to. And so my next thing is, what do you ask? And I always ask, gee, do you have vending? That was always my first question. Is do you have vending? Because you'd be amazed at the number of places that don't have vending. And then my second question always would be, are you happy with the vendor that you have right now? Now that brought about a couple of different answers. One of them would be, yes, we're really happy. They do a great job, blah, 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 blah. And then I would usually say, do you know who your vendor is? And then I would generally be moving on at that point. I'd be going to the next door. Or I would drop a business card and just say, well, gee, if things change, just get it to it. Probably 50% of the time I got a guy said, man, our vending service, it's terrible. It's just terrible. And they many times would lead you right to the person that you need to talk to that is actually the decision maker. It might be the business owner or the general manager or whatever. And you sometimes could be into a full presentation right there on the spot and be closing a deal right as you're talking to the guys. That was my experience. Joe, did you do any cold calling like this?
Yeah, I did a lot of them. I listened for keywords also. If the guy was dissatisfied and I heard that, the machine's always empty, that type of stuff, it meant to me that, the machines were selling a good amount of product. If I heard that, the product is always stale, he never comes by, that type of stuff, then, I felt like that the account wasn't all that good. So, asking key questions can tip you off on how good the account is.
Oh, absolutely, yeah, and that's why I like to do a lot of door knocking, because I can get more information out of somebody within a few minutes than I could all day on the telephone. Real information, how easy was that account to service? Because as so many vendors know, if you have to go up 3 flights of stairs or you have to go up an elevator, it slows you down tremendously. And so that's why I really like to do a lot of door knocking, because I like to make sure that if an account, I needed to know if an account was going to be worthwhile to do it. And one great way is by walking in. Oftentimes you don't get the real story from a customer. Has anybody heard that, Dan or Joe? Have you ever heard a customer not tell the truth or exaggerate their claims, perhaps? They have more people working there than they claim?
Always had 50 employees or more. They never had less, because they know that was the key amount of employees you have to have that a vending service would want you to, want your business. So it's always 50 people.
Right.
What a good thing to do is if you can combine a lot of these things is, for instance, you got on the phone and you had a lead and you go to see a customer over there or a potential prospect or what have you. But while you're there, as long as you're there, you might as well go to the places that are right around them. And so you're doing a double whammy. As long as you're there, you might as well call. In fact, you should make a habit of that. Every time you're anywhere, make sure you go to 1 or 2 others and just drop in and say hello. One of the other questions that I like to use when you ask them, are you happy with your vending company? A lot of times I would say, tell me what you like best about your present vending company. I don't know what it is. It's something psychological. They'll immediately tell you everything they hate about them.
And I would do very similar things. I'd say, what do you like about, what do you really like about them? What would you change too? Always stay positive. Ask questions. It's like not what do you hate, but hey, what would you change if you could run the vending company? What would you change? And that really gets to the mustard, because they'll tell you all kinds of things, and some of the things might be very minor and really surprise you. I mean, you can have a manager or a dock manager say, I hate that this guy parks over on the left side of the parking lot every time he comes here. I've asked him a dozen times not to park on the left side of the parking lot. He does it every single time, and it causes me big problems. And I got an account that way one time. I said, well, I tell you what, if I park on the right side of the account of the building and I get the account, and he goes, if you can guarantee it, you got it. And that was it. We were done. That guy was out of there. I mean, and it was a simple thing like that. The guy wouldn't listen. He wouldn't park. He was in the way. It was easier for him to service the account from over there, but it in effect cost him the account. So was it worth it for him? I don't know. It's hard to say. So with all of that, that's some techniques for cold calling. We're gonna go now. We're gonna go over to warm leads. We all kind of prefer in sales. Anytime we sell, we prefer to do warm leads. I do want to say one other thing on knocking doors, on a thing that Dan said. I did most of my sales when I was actually on the route. So Dan said, you drive by, you're out on your route, you're driving into your XYZ stop, and you've been looking at next door for the past 2 years while you've been servicing the account, and you've never stopped in. And my challenge to you guys out there that are listening to this is, tomorrow when you drive to XYZ stop in next door and see what they've got, because you might find yourself that you have a nice little account that sits there that you drive all of, 40 yards to get to, and you're going to have 2 accounts that are right close to each other. So I really like that when Dan said that about going out there and, call next door, batch your things up. But y'all, now I know I'm telling stories that you all know it's all true. If you're out running route every day, there's places you haven't been next door to. Nobody, don't kid me out there, guys. I know how y'all are. I did vending for 20 plus years. I'm very aware of what goes on. Joe, was that your experience too? Did you find
another good thing about going next door or a couple of doors down, they all know the companies that you're servicing. So, and most of the time, they know the operations manager or whoever's running that company. And, if they know that you're doing well in that company, they're more obligated to put you into their company. So, it's a contact that they go by every day, that they know the company, so you're more apt to pick it up.
Yep, and I would agree with that statement as well. All of that's kind of a marketing function, but it's still very, very valid. All right, let's move on to warm leads, because we can get real specific and do more cold calling techniques, for hours on end, especially with three sales professionals who've been doing this stuff for a long time. But I'm just gonna click in here. Y'all know about networking and extended networking, and then marketing and advertising. Now, we're not going to discuss marketing and advertising because that's largely a function of marketing, but advertising will be a future show, and coming out sometime in the near future, we'll do a session on advertising and true marketing. We've already done some marketing, but we'll do true marketing and advertising in a future show. Those are warm leads. If you get a call from an ad, I don't care what ad you've got out there, or you get some kind of lead that comes to you from a business card you dropped a long time ago or something like that. Those to me are laydowns. If you don't get that account, it's because you've made some kind of technical glitch, or the account's not worth having, which is a separate issue. But that's my opinion on marketing and advertising. Joe, what's been your thing? If you got an ad, if you were running an ad and somebody called in on it, what was your closing? How much closing could you get? Did you get those accounts?
Time, you're pretty well one-on-one, and if you can't close that, I don't know what to tell you. You know what I mean? Because they're definitely calling in, hunting for a vendor. All you got to do is go out there and, see what. Most people want problem-free vending. They want the vending machines in there. They want them to work. They want the product in there that the employees want, and they just want it problem-free because they've got other problems in the company that they need to deal with. And when it's not that way, that's when you can get an account.
Yeah,
so,
that's a really that vending is pretty low on most managers' lists of concerns, and so my marketing philosophy was always to be, I always trained my people this way too, I wanted to create no extra work for a manager in the facility. And if I could achieve the not creating extra work for a manager in the facility, I think I succeeded. So that's a really good point. So let's just get into networking right now. Networking is the process of who do you know that might be able to get you some business. And so I always started off networking, who do you come into contact with regularly? Who do you see on a daily or weekly or monthly basis that you talk to all the time? I always looked at it a couple of ways. Who do I buy from? Because everybody that I buy from knew what business I was in vending anyway. They all knew. They knew who might be looking for accounts out there or something like that. One of the people I bought from was Joe Nichols from A&M Equipment Sales. And Joe, you sent me a number of leads, especially early on, that gave me decent business and got me started. And you did that because, we had a business relationship and things like that. And so in the efforts of doing a good job for your business, you knew I had to take care of my business. Dan, do you have things like that? Do you network with people you buy from?
Oh, I followed it. You nailed it just before, but this is a big deal for me. I've always felt, it's not who you know, it's who knows you, and who knows you and what you do. And so in all your daily activities, it's as if I wear a sign on my chest to tell you what I'm doing that day. I change businesses regularly, so I do that. Everyone I speak with on a daily basis, and I'm also actively looking to give leads to as many people as possible. Again, just so they know me better. If you get to be known as the guy who can help somebody else run their business or help somebody else's business, you don't have enough time to do cold calling because your phone just keeps on ringing all day.
Rings and rings and rings, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So other sources are people you socialize with, your friends, your neighbors, anybody you contact with, church, things like that. Family and family contacts. Don't forget to ask your family, do they know anybody that might be looking? because you don't overlook anyone. You just never know. And, folks, this doesn't mean you beat them to death. It just means you say, hey, I started a vending business, or I'm still in the vending business. Do you know anybody that might be looking every once in a while? We're trying to grow the business, or whatever you want to say. There's a million ways to approach people, and you don't have to be beating them to death. It's just casual conversation, and that'll get you leads. I'm big on membership organizations, and I know, Dan, you are, and I know, Joe, you are too. We always look at, anytime you're a member of anything, a church or a club or, even your schools or other clubs, I've got other organizations we'll go over down here, but there's other types of organizations such as business organizations, Rotary, Chambers of Commerce, business development groups, things like that. All of these things are sources of potential leads for you because these are all places where people know you doing other things besides your job. And if you can develop a reputation of doing a good job in things other than your job, it lends your credibility and people will purchase from you because they know you and like you. Dan, what's your philosophy on selling as far as people knowing and liking you? Because I love your philosophy on this.
Yeah, well, that's the whole thing. I'll tell you, but I just got to carry over on something my dad told me a long time ago. He said, and I'm sure other dads have said it, he's not the only genius around there, but you just nailed on it. What happens is if you do anything well, people think you do everything well. And so if you're in that church group or that airplane club or whatever you're in and you do something well, they're automatically going to think that you're the guy, the go-to guy to go to for anything. But my philosophy is, as far as sales, people need to like you first. And there's 4 things you need to do to make a sale. They have to like you, they have to trust you, they believe you can do the work, and then they'll develop a desire to do business with you. Once you have that, basically a friend, you're just waiting around for a want or a need, and then you're their person. And remember this, like comes first. And the way I can prove this is no one's ever had a girl go out with them a second time if they didn't like them and they only trusted them. Nobody goes out with someone because they trust them. They got to like them first.
And I think that's fantastic. You can't be more succinct than that. It's absolutely perfect. They've got to like you, they've got to trust you, they've got to believe you can do the work, and then you're just waiting for the chance for something to change in their life. And that's why you keep in contact with all these people that you know, because things change in people's lives. Folks out there, how many of you have had change in your life in the past year? Have you moved? Have you had a child? Has anything done anything to change in your life? And all of you are nodding your head yes, because everybody has some kind of change in their life. And then I'm just looking at some of the things that Joe's got some chats up here. Are you happy with your current vending company? I'm finally glad I can finally see this chat. That's good.
Hey, let me just for a second, Larry, if you're on the phone and you want to ask a question, just go ahead and hit *1 and ask the question, and then you can, that will unmute your line.
All right, so I'll give you a second to do that. If anybody wants to ask any questions, it's a good time now.
If you're on chat, just go ahead and ask it there. Someone asked if the seminar is going to start over, but no, we'll send out a recording of it later.
All right, so with that, I'm going to move into what I like to call extended networking. And to me, extended networking is who else's network can you tap into? Meaning, there's people out there that do things that allow you to tap into their network. And probably one of the biggest ones is who sells to a similar customer. Dan, what do you do right now for work? What's your job? What's your means of profession?
Right now, I have a staffing company. Oh, my phone's back. I have a staffing company where I help companies who need strong, conscientious, hard-working, good-looking people to work with.
Yeah, and so you happen to sell to people, because we did this when we did our practice show. You tended to you tend to sell to a lot of people that buy vending services. We found out in our practice thing. I always looked at who sells to similar customers. Well, uniform companies do, office coffee services do, business supply companies do, and we found out staffing companies too. Dan, how many vendors have contacted you about sending them leads?
I could count that. Actually, I can't count it on one hand because it's zero. Now, I've given probably in the past year 3 or 4 accounts to a vendor friend of mine, all unsolicited. But what happens is I'll go into a place, and every time I'm dealing, like I said, I go in the back door just like you, and I'm dealing with light industrial warehouse workers, and there's always vending there, and sometimes they're not. They're empty, and sometimes people are just complaining about their vending, walking around. They hate stale honey buns.
Right? You're a source of good leads.
I sure am. And every staffing person is. And it's amazing. Yeah, it's amazing what people will do for a free honey bun.
Well,
The good thing about a staffing company is when they're contacting you for more employees, that means they're ramping up, which means you can make more money in that account because there's going to be more employees. And maybe the current vendor doesn't know that, and he's hitting it once a week when he should be hitting the thing twice a week. So they might be all running out all the time. So a staffing company would be a good way of going.
I'll tell you right now how to get all the business from the staffing companies around your neighborhood. All you have to do is when you go to your accounts, contact a staffing company and say, I have a lead for you. And if it's a good lead, now it doesn't mean that they're going to get it, but it's someone that you know that they use staffing and it's probably good for them. And just the act of you giving them a lead makes them compelled to return the favor.
Well, and so there you go. That's fantastic advice for what we're talking about. So that's one of the ways of who's, I always had several people out there who more or less worked indirectly for me, and in turn I did send them leads as well. Just like Dan's saying, I turned around and sent them leads when I felt there was a need. I had several people in cleaning companies that were sending me leads. I had some uniform company guys that were sending me leads. I did have some office coffee service guys that we were trading leads, and we sold the office coffee service, and they were still giving me vending leads. Business supplies is another one. All of us sell to the same customer. I also put down here competitors. I got a tremendous amount of business from competitors, and I was a small vendor. I did largely smaller accounts. I got large companies like to send business to someone they can trust. It's because they have size limitations and they don't want to necessarily take smaller accounts. They don't like 50 or 100 less employees, and so they would send me the accounts that were 50 to 100 people, which for me, if they were close to my service area, were tremendous accounts for me. How do you get to those people? Contact the salespeople directly. Contact the principals of the large businesses, the managers, and things like that. And for those guys in the vending business, I'm talking about people at Canteen. I'm talking about people at ARA. I'm talking about the guys in the big vending companies in your town or city, wherever you live. And just strike up a conversation. Talking to your competitors can also be a source of equipment. You can find out things about where they're buying product, what kind of pricing they're getting, and all that kind of thing. And it all starts by contacting some of your larger competitors that you're not necessarily competing with. And even if you're a large vendor, you still can do that and contact the other large vendors and see, who's trading accounts and who's doing this and who's doing that. Joe, what do you have to say about that?
I always sent the leads to the customers that I knew that were going to do a good job. A lot of these smaller location, the vendor has a larger location that is affiliated with it, and the vendor must know that the small vendor is going to do a good job with the account he's sending you. So you always want to go out there, and if you don't take the account, you contact the large vendor that you're not going to take the account, so he knows about it, so he doesn't leave. Don't always do what you say you're going to do, and do a good job, and you'll get all the leads you want from the big vendors.
Correct. All right, other things are geographic considerations when it comes to competitors. I find I had a great working relationships with several competitors of mine that worked in geographically different areas than I did. Meaning I worked the north side of Atlanta. I had several people from the east, south, and west side of Atlanta, and I even had one guy who worked the north side of Atlanta. And we would get leads in areas that weren't in our geographic area, or our area of operations, I guess is what I want to say. We were largely running route on the north side, and I would get an account down on the south side, and I had a couple of competitors, friendly competitors, I guess I want to call them, and I would send them leads, and we got tremendous leads from people like that. The ability to, they would get a phone call from somebody, oh, we've got this, we've got that. Lots of times, I know in my business, I had accounts with multiple locations where they would have 5, 10 locations around the city, and I couldn't service all of them. They were just too far away to really make any money. I would spend more time driving, and then there were service considerations and all the things that go into running a vending business. But if I had a local guy over there who I trusted, man, he'd get the business, and we'd work as a team, and it was fantastic. And we dominated a couple of industries that way by working as a team in the geographic areas. And we very rarely walked on each other. Occasionally, every once in a while. But, we would talk, and we kind of laughed because half the time we knew it was coming anyway and things like that. So it really wasn't that a big deal. Dan, do you see that? You don't really do anything like that in your business now, do you? Or do you do anything like that?
I used to, a lot. And what happens is the smaller people, the smaller guys, they're real protective about everything. You want to grab everything, and they're not really paying attention. And they think any account is a good account. The ones that are more established, people who have been around a while, they're much better with their competition than new people, which is ironic not to be that way. But so no, I have some relationships like that with people, and it's because I don't care. At the end of the day, there's so much business out there. I mean, all the stuff we're talking about right now, and Joe knows this. The reason why people succeed or not succeed in getting new clients is simply because those who are succeeding getting new clients are actively trying to get new clients. The ones that aren't succeeding are the ones that are sitting home thinking about ways to get new clients.
And the way to get new clients is go call on people.
That's all. I mean, that's everything we're talking about right now. We're talking about either calling them on the phone, or either visiting, going there in person, either calling somebody, a competitor, either doing some networking, but you're actively going out, making the effort to do something. 90% of the people are sitting home waiting for stuff to happen.
Yeah, yep, I agree with that one. There's one other technique that I did, and I'm going to let Joe tell a story about this one in a minute, but I used to follow route men who I knew were performing at a substandard level. If I had a competitor, usually one of the bigger competitors, and if he had a route man that we started getting account after account, and I happened to notice it was the same route man, I started to follow him around. And I'm going to let Joe take it away. Joe, tell your story about following route men around.
Well, you got to kind of watch that. Back when I was in my early 20s, and I was following a large vending company route truck, and I'd follow him to a location, and he'd go in and start servicing it, and I'd be sitting in the car, and I'd write everything down on where he was going and how much he was bringing in and all that. And we went to 4 or 5 accounts, and all of a sudden I had this 2 or 3 police cars surround me, and the vending route man thought I was getting ready to rob the vendor. So, you know, if you're going to do that, go to maybe a couple of stops and then take off, and then, you know, maybe follow him if you want to do that, you know, some other time. But I don't follow route trucks anymore after that. So kind of scared me a little bit. So, but just, you know, follow him a couple of places, and then, you know, that's enough, because you don't want to scare the route man. It's too rough on him.
That's a great story.
Yeah, it wasn't great when I was there.
But you know, I think that's great. You have, you know, an embarrassing, frightening moment for 15 minutes, and now you have a story you can tell for the rest of your life.
Right.
It's worth it.
You always have to have a story, you know.
You have to have some kind of story.
Yep.
So the guys are writing on the chat line, yeah, that would be my luck, right? I get up in jail. So anyway, but you can't follow routemen performing at a substandard level, because you know that those get to be easy. Let's go to referrals from customers. These are probably the best warm leads you can get. When you have a customer that you get a referral from, that's literally as the easiest sale as it comes from. The one thing that I always like to tell people, I like to make sure that people understand that, and if you haven't figured it out, folks, you need to just be cognizant of it. You need to be aware that this happens. Employees change firms. They do it all the time, and they move from one business to another. And if the other business is having problems with their vendor, many times you'll get a call saying, you know, we just hired somebody, and this guy, you know, says you guys do a good job in vending. And so that's one of the big things that I found in referrals is that we had people change. I also like to tap into management networks, and that's who talks to whom. Do they have multiple locations? I had mentioned that before. You get into some of these managers that are moving up the chain, you know, and from today they're a plant manager, tomorrow they're a district manager. Well, when they get to be a district manager, guess who gets the vending for the whole district? You do, if you do a good job. And that can be a very, very lucrative source of leads. It's also very, very easy to get when you get those things. Also, who do they contact? You know, who do they talk to in their industry? Everybody knows the guy down the street, you know, and it's the same thing. And on occasion it comes up. It's like, you know, somebody will be saying, man, who does your vending? And, you know, and if you can get that referral thing going, it really works out well. And Joe said another thing, too, on the geographic thing where, you know, down the street, they know the company down the street, so they're looking at that. It's not only in their industry, but in other industries that are close to them geographically, and that works out really well. Joe, do you agree with this? Do you have anything to add to this particular either of these points?
I always bribed as many as I could when I was in the break room. You know, every now and then I give a guy a free cup of coffee if he's a manager, or, you know, if he's just a friend of mine. Free coffee, maybe a honey bun. You know, some of the stuff you're pulling out of the machine, hey, you know, you got to throw it away, or, you know, it's that day before it's out of date. Give it to some of the guys there, because you know, the more friends you have, the better off you're going to be, and the more you know, the more accounts you're going to get. So you know, and a cup of coffee is I don't know how much it is now, but it used to be, you know, 20 cents, something like that. So you order a few cups of coffee out, and it works miracles, believe me.
And Dan, I want you to tell your story about giving out cookies.
Oh, well, I'm different than probably a lot of people on the call here. I'm out selling every day. That's what I do. I'm not servicing, so I'm not splitting up my time. So what I'll do is, you know, a lot of times in the business I'm in right now, it's not a one-shot deal. I really need to call on these people on a regular basis. And there are some larger accounts that I literally go to every single week. Tuesday at around 3 o'clock, I'm at that place, and they'll expect me to come. And they expect me to come because I never go empty-handed. I never go with a card. I have what I call the cookie and card close. And so every time I go there, I get, Famous Amos cookies or some bag of some cookies, and I staple my business card to it. And my business card always has my big, ugly mug on it, too. It's comical. And so every time I go there, I drop off a card and cookie. Now, if I miss a week, they'll call me. Where are my cookies? And so it's the greatest thing. What happens is they associate me coming to the place with happiness. And again, I'm all building the same thing: the likability, the trust, the believing you can do the work, and all that. So when they have that need, it's a risk for them to go anywhere else besides the one that's been building that relationship all that time. And I've gotten some large accounts that way.
And that's great advice. Someone on the chat writes, in other words, it's about schmoozing.
Oh my gosh!
Exactly.
He couldn't have said it better. Of course it is about schmoozing. The whole thing. That's what everything is. Don't you want to deal with people that are schmoozing you?
Yeah. It's people you like. That's the name of the game.
Exactly. Now, the only other. Go ahead, Larry.
Go ahead, Dan.
All right. Well, I've heard one story about an account that I was trying to get. They were using another company for probably 15 years. But I've been going there for a while with the card and cookie and all that stuff. And I could, they liked me. They're good. They're like, listen, we've been using this other company for so long. We really just can't. I mean, it's not even that we don't want to. We really just can't. And so I finally asked them. I said, well, who do you work with? Who are your customers? And they told me who their best customers were. And I went back home to my office, and then I made some phone calls. And when I went back to them the next time, I brought them 5 leads. It was printing companies that they were doing. So I brought them 5 leads. I made cold calls as if I was them to get them these leads. And 3 of those leads turned out to customers for them. As soon as they got those customers. And when I gave them the leads, it was great. I gave them, and I said, by the way, is your other company giving you leads? It's just a question. I don't know. Anyway, 3 of those turned into clients, and then their next phone call was to me to get that business that somebody else had for 15 years. That's ultimate schmoozing right there.
That's called working for somebody else. That's what we were talking about up here is whose network can you tap into, who sells to a similar customer, right? That's what it's all about. And we run into these concepts every day in vending. You forever, if you haven't been in vending long, you're going to hear this. Do you know anybody that does a good job cleaning? And the cleaning companies tend to rotate in and out like crazy, it seems like to me. But, the other things, I've sent leads to landscape companies. I've sent leads to truck mechanics. I've sent leads to truck salesmen because I know more about what's happening with the truck fleet. If I've got an account or had an account that had a lot of trucks in it, I knew whether those trucks were ready to fall apart or not. And I had a couple of people in trucking companies and guys that were out on the streets that I'd send leads to, and they'd be like, man, I owe you one. I said, yeah, tell me the name of your biggest customer. And then we'd start selling them. So it gets back to whose network can you tap into. Look at who and Dan, that's a great point. Who are their largest customers? Because their largest customers might be one of your largest customers coming up in the future. So it's all about that relationship. It's all about that. Let's open it up. Does anybody have any questions? I guess you can. Tom,
one more thing I'd like to say is a warning is these locating companies, and all the years I've been in this business, a locating company will just try to take your money, give you, bad locations, and if you go with a locating company, make sure that you don't pay them any money till you go in there and talk to the contact, find out how many employees he's got, find out how much commission the locating company has given the company, and just make sure the guy's on the up and up. But I've never seen a locating company that has been worth their salt, because it takes, for a real good account, it takes multiple times going to the company and to pick it up. You're just not going to hit it the first time. So all these locating companies, that's a waste of money.
And they'll just resell the account.
Exactly.
Yeah, they go out and they just sell and sell and sell, and it's different. Like when I do consulting for vending, just not to blow my own horn, but if somebody wants sales consulting, we go out and make calls, and I'll actually ride with them and make calls. That's why it's expensive, to be really honest. Most of those locating companies work on the phone, and they're barely giving you a warm lead, has been my experience. They're barely warm. They give you a little bit of information, and that's about it. They don't actually close deals. They don't help you with your setup. They don't tell you whether or not this is a good account or a bad account, because they really don't have a clue most of the time. And it's not all of them, but it's a good number of them really don't have any kind of clue. And a lot of this, too, folks, this is all coming to you courtesy of Joe at A&M Equipment Sales, and Joe has this to what his goal is to do, and I'm blowing your horn here, Joe. If he helps his customers succeed, which is you guys as vendors, and this is why we do these webinars and why we give you these tips, if he helps his customers succeed, that means that, in theory anyway, y'all are going to need a whole lot more equipment, and so, we provide these webinars for that reason. And we want you to succeed so that you can go and, in turn, help the rest of us do well as well. So we are going to open it up to questions. If you have some questions, Tom, how do they unmute their phones, or can they ask over the chat?
Yeah, you can ask over chat, or just hit *1 if you're on a phone. And we've got one more poll question to come up here, and I'll go ahead and start that while while people may have a question.
Okay, and I turned it over to you. So.
Maybe we can ask, what are some of the challenges that you guys are finding out there in getting new clients?
Great. Yeah, what challenges do you face as you go out and sell? We found your customers are kind of all over the place. We have a whole bunch of things. Okay, here we go. So we've got the survey up. Survey shows about 50% are in and about 16% are out, with a few people not answering, or having not answered, and that's okay. We'll give it a few more minutes to see how it comes up. All right, I still don't know. Okay, so I'm not sure how to answer this question. I'm in the process of getting started as of tomorrow. Okay, good. So, folks, any questions out there? Tom, did you tell them how to unmute their phone?
Yeah, there's someone asked how to find the right size account or location.
Oh, how do you find the right size? Yeah, the right size account is a tough thing. That really depends on your business model, at least in my opinion. And Joe, I'll let you talk in on this in a little bit. The right size account is kind of it depends on what your model is and how you, it just depends on what you want, what you're looking for. There's a couple other questions here. Sue's asking, the big challenge is larger businesses who are now taking over smaller accounts that before the recession they would never touch. How do you overcome this? I'm going to answer that one for myself, and Joe, I'm going to let you answer it. My answer to that one, Sue, is that what you would really want to do is you want to do the best job. That you can outperform a large business if you're a smaller company. There's no way you can't. hit them with service, hit them with making sure everything is clean. Be very careful of the detail, because a lot of times in the big companies, you'll get some guy, you'll get a sales guy that'll make a lot of promises, but he can't deliver. If you're the smaller vendor, you need to deliver on your promises. That's my thing on how you overcome that. Joe, what do you have to say about that?
Well, all the larger companies have planograms. They put what they want to put in the machines. With you able to give prompt, personalized service, since you're small, if the guy wants Texas cinnamon rolls, you can put them in the next time you're there, where large company, the guy might be begging, and he never gets what he wants. So you got a big advantage over a large vending company. So, and most of these smaller accounts, they just don't do the job, and they're not. They can't be everywhere because they've got so many accounts. They can't. They can't be everywhere. So it's very easy to knock them off. You just got to keep hitting on them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Joe's got it. The thing that I've always found amazing in business, and I love small business, is that when someone gets started, the small guy wants to portray themselves as being larger. It somehow makes them feel better. The big guy is always trying to make himself seem more smaller and local, because they know they're big. They know that people want that small local feel. They want that, at least to feel like they're getting the attention that only a smaller vendor can provide. You could out-service the tar out of those big dogs all day long.
Exactly. Exactly.
So David Sylvester asks, my prospects are equipment heavy and don't like to hear it. David, send me another email on that one and just clarify that a little bit by what you mean they're equipment heavy and they don't like to hear it. Gene says, I have a full-time job and don't have time to cold call during the day. What do you suggest? Hiring a salesperson is his question. And Gene, my answer to that is that if you're going to start, that really I found, let's get into timing of cold calls. I found personally for me, my best success came when I was doing cold calls or calls in general. My best time to do calls was before 8 o'clock in the morning and after 5 o'clock at night. And I'm going to tell you why. When I made a call at before 8 o'clock in the morning, and let me tell you, I made some calls at 4 o'clock in the morning. The reason I made those calls at 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock or 7 o'clock at night was that I found that when I walked into that place, the only people that were there were people that could make the decision. And they were usually extremely impressed by the fact that I walked in at the same time. While they were still out busting their hump, I was out busting my hump, and they really appreciated that. When I did that kind of thing, they looked at me and they said, you're going to do a good job. And in general, I made that come true. So I'm going to turn this one over to, the reason I say that, Gene, is I don't suggest hiring a salesperson. I suggest making your time more efficient, and cold calls don't take a long time. You only have to do 1 or 2 a day, and before you know it, you're going to get some accounts, and you're going to get busy. That's what's going to happen. But you got to be kind of creative on your time and do it that way. What do you, Joe? What do you say about that? Should you hire a salesperson?
I always hit mine during the day. I didn't do too much at night. I used to run around industrial sections at night to count cars to see how many employees a certain business had. They might have 20 cars during the day and 20 cars 3 to 11 and 11 to 7. They might have another 20. So, that's some of those sleeper accounts that nobody knows about. That and if you walked in at night, one, they wouldn't know who you were, but if you could drum up a conversation, those are the guys that are actually using the vending machines all the time. So, if they're not working properly or whatever, they really rely on them. So, you could probably do pretty good there. But, if you could get off early a couple hours, each week, and really hit it hot and heavy and, run around at night too, I think it'd be a pretty good way of doing it.
Yeah. Dan, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think it's brilliant, your idea. Just go do the midnight shift. You'll just walk right in. You'll be their best friends. They'll tell you that's brilliant. And you really, no, don't hire a salesman unless because more than likely you'll get a lousy one and you'll just waste your money. But even worse than that, if you get a really good one, you won't be able to handle all the business.
Yeah, well, right, exactly, and that's good advice too. Because one of the things that can kill you in vending is too much business too fast. It'll make you. It's a cash flow issue. We'll go into that in a future thing, but future webinar. But it can kill you. I wanted to. Sue sent back a second thing. She said the big companies have come in and promised the world with new machines, high commissions, and they're signing contracts. And I just have one thing to say about that. You do have to train your people, because what's the problem? I'm going to ask Dan this. Dan, what's the problem with a contract? Where do you go to get out of a contract?
The contracts aren't worth the paper they're printed on.
Right.
Doesn't mean that.
You got to go to get rid of them, right?
Yeah.
And what? Sue, just to give you kind of an idea, you have to build these. You have to build your case in advance. New machines are great. You know what I used to always say about new machines, and Joe, you'll laugh at this one because I ran a lot of your refurbished equipment, so you know that this is the case. I'd look at them and say, with a questioning tone in my voice, I'd say, "You want new equipment?" And they'd look at me and they'd go, "Well, what do you mean?" And I'd go, "Well, that new equipment isn't all it's cracked up to be. This equipment we have here works really well. It's been around for a while. All the kinks in the software programs have all been worked out on this equipment." And the guy, all of a sudden, you're dropping a little question of doubt into that new machine. Is that new machine as great as they want to say it? The high commission thing is kind of tough if they're paying commissions. If they want to pay commissions, Sue, there is a point in time when you say, you know what, I can't afford to do the account, and you have to just stay in contact with them after that, because eventually what will happen is, and you've even said it in your note here, they promise the world, but do they deliver? And the question is, and you know it as well as I do, they'll end up dropping the ball. And 3 or 4 months down the road, you'll get the account back or a year, or whenever the contract ends up, you'll get that account back. Joe, has that been your experience as well?
You got to watch what they say, because a lot of times they don't say new machines; they say like new machines. Now, when we do our remanufacturing process, we make the machine look brand new, even though the machine might be 8 or 10 years old. When we get through with it, it looks brand new. And the vendor says it's like new equipment. So the customer automatically, they look at the new, they don't see the like, so they think they're getting new equipment. But, with our remanufacturing process, we can make a used machine look and act like a brand new machine with no problem. So don't be scared of, putting remanufactured equipment at less cost, to where you can you can get your money back a lot quicker that way.
Yeah.
Yeah. The only thing I would add is, Sue, you just want to make sure that you're selling what they're buying. You could ask them, what do they want the new machines for? What you're originally selling is you're selling happy, satisfied employees that don't have to run out and waste time outside. They got their product always there. You're selling the idea that if there's a challenge, anything going on with the CoinMex, you're going to fix it right away. You're selling what Larry said earlier, problem-free service. They don't care if it's a clean machine or not. Now, if they just want the commissions, you ask them that. Do you really want this? What do you want this vending for? Do you want it to serve your employees, or do you want it for commission? Because if it's commission, it's probably not me. It's probably them. But if it's to do that other thing and to make it problem-free, and you won't have to think about it, and it's good for the employees, then I'm your man or gal, maybe.
A lot of times on commission, they're worried about getting the right commission. And that's where a lot of these card readers now, it has a monitoring service on it, to where you can have them monitor the machines and see exactly how much money is going into the machines. I've got a lady that goes after all the high schools in Atlanta, and she has that monitoring service that she just lets the school look at the monitoring on the machines, and they know exactly what their commission is going to be. And their commissions have really increased since they got her, because it's an honest, true commission rate.
Right. Let's move on to some of the other questions. One from David: what should you price your soda vending machine at? David, that's going to be a function of what you spend on your product. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this, but generally, if you're not making 100%, you need to you need to make at least 100%, meaning you need to double your money, and that's going to be true on all your products. That'll leave you in good financial shape. Roger Gurley asks about, are contracts for new accounts good? I see a lot of new accounts that have been in contracts and received poor service, and it's like they're scared to commit. What are our thoughts? Well, you heard some of our comments about contracts. I never signed a contract except for one big government account. That was at their insistence, because they had multiple locations and they needed a contract. As your complexity gets bigger, you need to consider contracts. But for the most part, I always did call it a agreement. And basically, it said that if they were unhappy with the service, they needed to just give me notice, and we would change out. Now, I did that because I had tremendous confidence in my ability to do business, and I knew that I would have problems rapidly. They wouldn't receive poor service. So the contract is actually, when somebody comes in and says, do you require a contract? And I look them square in the face and I say, do we need one? And they'd look at me and go, I don't know. And I'd go, well, if you're good with it, I'm good with it. If you're dissatisfied with what you change. Because a contract is something that scares people, because you have to go to court to get out of a contract. It's just a nightmare. And nobody.
I would have loved to have done business with you, Larry. That's perfect.
Well, thank you. And that's because the thing about a contract is, if they're unhappy, why do you want to stay there? If they're unhappy, you're unhappy. It really boils down to that. I mean, any accounts that we ever turned over, we generally weren't happy with them anyway, so we let them go. That's my opinion on contracts. Brian asks about on moving equipment itself. Brian, I'm going to tell you, if you've never moved vending equipment, hire it done. Joe, do you agree with that?
I agree. If you don't know what you're doing, you can get yourself hurt.
Yeah,
it's the best $50 you'll ever spend.
Yep, absolutely. There's all kinds of tricks in moving equipment. Let somebody that's done it a lot do it. I moved all my own, but that's because I started out in the vending business. My first job in the vending business was moving equipment, and I got taught by a guy that had 30 years of experience, so I did my own, but I would recommend having it done. There's plenty of people in your area that can do it.
As far as buying equipment from us, a lot of times we'll ship it directly to the location, and then the truck driver will bring it in. Then you get a forklift, take it off the pallet. It's real easy to have a pallet jack and bring it into the location. So a lot of times, if you're buying equipment from us, we ship it directly to the location. And it's a lot easier that way, so you don't have to hire.
That's the best deal in the house right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the best deal in the house, I was going to say. So David Becker asks, when starting a vending business, which is better, new or used machines, and should I go with a bottling company? And David,
are they going to ask that of you, Larry?
Well, the funny thing is we put out a lot of new equipment, believe it or not, and we ended up going with a bottling company, but I was in business for almost 10 years before I went with a bottling company. I used a lot of used equipment. A lot of it just depends on what you think the volume. It's really a numbers game. It boils down to what the account's going to do for money, what the customer expectation is. Personally, my number one advice in starting a vending business is you want to keep your overhead as low as possible, and I mean rock bottom low. I ran my last company out of a tractor trailer with a side door, and the product went in the back door of the tractor trailer and went out the side door into my route trucks, and that was my warehouse. And I spent Dan Jordan, what was my facility like? You sold my business. What was my
God. It was a nightmare. Let me tell you about Larry, and this is the big thing that I learned from him. some of his machines were good. Some of, the ones that he got from Joe were good. The other ones were really horrible. But the thing about Larry, every single machine had the best CoinMex system possible. He spent the money on the CoinMex. That's all that mattered. If that money went in and came out, he got paid. Perfect.
And you forget the machines worked, too, all the time.
Yes, that's right. Keys worked every time. Larry focused on the things that worked. He just focused on the things that could earn him money, and the stuff that didn't earn him money, like a warehouse, didn't bother with.
Now, as far as bottlers go, I would, I'd love to say a drink machine, but if you can get a good deal with a bottler, where you can make money, that's great. Most of the bottlers nowadays, they raise the rate of the product so high that you're doing all the work and they're making all the money. So get with them and see, what they're, what you can do. And, if you can make money, go with the bottler and buy snacks from me. Because the whole thing is making money.
All right, so let's get on to another question. Edwin Hale has a question about what about government facility requirements for healthy vending when the customers don't actually want those products, they just want Snickers bars. This is a great thing that vendors are facing right now. The reality is what constitutes a healthy snack, and we used to do segments of our machines in healthy, what we called healthy products, and yes, Edwin, I agree, they wanted Snickers, they bought Snickers bars, but boy, they wanted that healthy product. They sure did. But the government facilities, you're going to have to do the healthy vending segments in your product. That's going to be done mandated by law. Joe's got more information on that. We've actually done a whole webcast on that. So we'll get you more information on that. I'm going to move on to the next one. David Sylvester went on a call today. The customer was dissatisfied with the current vendor. I told them I could service the account with half the equipment, and they felt they were not going to get what they were used to. I've seen this before where accounts have been oversold and the prospect feels that less machines will not provide the same quality. I'll tell you how I always dealt with that. I looked at customers straight in the face and I looked at them and I said, this worked in businesses that were for profit, and I say that because it was more difficult with government facilities and it was more difficult with nonprofit organizations. But if you're dealing with a company that's for profit, I would sit there and look at the customer literally and this is not me being a smart derriere guy. I'm not being a wise guy, but I would say to them, I go, can I ask you a question? And they would say, what's that? I said, is your business in business to make money? And of course, if they're for profit and not the government, they say yes. Yeah, we're in business to make money. And I say to them, would say the same thing. I said, well, so am I. I said, now, I'm going to ask you, you've got a whatever facility here, say a manufacturing facility. If you have twice as much equipment out there, are you making as much money? And he'd go, no. And I'd say, that's right. That's the situation we're in. I tell you what, if you need the equipment, let's start out with a small amount of equipment. If you need the equipment in the future, we'll put it in. Because we worked everything on scheduling, so we were always working on, we wanted to get people on the right schedule, so we would take maximum dollars out. Many times that meant we set equipment and maybe oversold them a little bit on equipment. But that's one way to deal with that, David, and I've done that and had pretty good success with it. Sometimes the customers just have this hotels and things are noted for this. Well, we want a machine on every floor, and you can't make money that way. You end up throwing out product and this and that.
Larry, one of the ideas I've had is I sell the AMS line of equipment, and you can get a refrigerated machine, and you can have 6 shelves with snacks in it, and the bottom shelf you can put sandwiches. So then you have 5 selections of sandwiches, and if the account sells the sandwiches, you can have a few more items of sandwiches in there. So you can use that machine as a snack and a sandwich machine at the same time and be able to give the guy what he wants and not have to spend that much money. So you do the same thing in 2 machines with 1 machine.
All right, where are we at? I lost audio for a second.
I was telling him about the AMS line of refrigerated machines, where it can be a snack and a sandwich machine at the same time. They can go on the website under refrigerated sandwich machines, and they can see that snack sandwich machine is down at the bottom of the page.
Hey, Larry, we got time for one more question if you want to, and then we're going to have to head on.
Okay, all right. Well, let's see. Let's see if we'll find one. Let's look at one last question. I'll ask David's question. How high of commission should I agree to, being new in the vending business? And then he has a corollary: should I offer product or commission? My opinion on commissions is that I don't feel you should offer commission unless the customer asks for it. That's my opinion. I feel you're doing them a tremendous service because you are taking you're eliminating their employees' off-site time, meaning their employees, if you don't have vending, they go off and their customers leave, and that has a cost to it and things like that. And most people want good service. Commission is usually pretty low. I tended to stay away from commission-type accounts unless they were very, very, very large, and then I might offer them up a commission. But that's my opinion. Joe, what do you say about commission?
Some of the high schools are looking for money, and high schools are the best accounts. Middle schools, elementary schools are not good at all. But the high school is a money maker. I've got a friend of mine that has 7 high schools, so he does $28,000 a week. So, and he pays them 30%. And his candy's $1.25, his snacks are $1, and he makes a lot of money. So, it's a sliding scale on what you price your product compared to the commission that you give. But if it's in high school, you can go up to 30%. Now, a normal place, I wouldn't go over about 12 to 15%, and you've got to raise the price on your product to do that.
Yep. So yeah, and that's my opinion. Well, Tom, are you going to finish us off here?
Yeah. On behalf of A&M Equipment Sales, thanks for attending this event. We're planning to have more webinars like this, and we'll be promoting the next one on the website, amequipmentsales.com. For further Q&A, contact Larry, Joe, or Dan by email. You can see their emails right here. For the benefit of those who aren't able to see them, Larry's is Service Group International, all spelled out, one word, at gmail.com. Joe's email is joe@amequipmentsales.com. And Dan is Dan at danjordan, JOURDAN.com. Also, you can go to A&M Equipment's sales Facebook page and ask questions there as well. So to keep up with future events like this, subscribe to A&M Equipment Sales newsletter, and it includes timely tips for the vendor. Or you can reply to the webinar email with subscribe in the subject line, and we'll add you to our email list. Good night.
Well, and we'd like to thank you all for coming, and we will see you all again very soon.
See you.